A woman in a small town cafe carries a coffee pot like it's part of her heartbeat. She's quiet, steady, almost invisible to the morning rush, until an admiral in full dress uniform steps inside. He glances at her, freezes mid-stride, and whispers a call sign no civilian should ever know. Fox 9. The room stills. The air thickens. What follows is a story of courage buried beneath scars, a past long hidden. And the moment the world learns that the quiet woman behind the counter once saved more lives than anyone in that room could imagine. Before we dive into this journey, where are you watching from today? And if stories of courage, dignity, and the unseen heroes among us resonate with you, please take a moment to subscribe. It truly helps bring these stories to life. The Admiral's fingers trembled the moment the words escaped him. A single whisper, barely louder than breath, yet sharp enough to slice through the cafe's easy morning chatter. Fox 9. The coffee pot hovered above a stranger's mug in the hands of a woman who did not look like anyone worthy of a call sign. Her apron was dusted with flour from a morning spent kneading dough. A stray wisp of hair clung to her cheek from the heat of the ovens. And her eyes, steady, watchful, a quiet ocean of memory, lifted just a fraction. She knew the voice, she wished she didn't. The room stilled, as if every loose thread of sound had been plucked from the air. Forks hung midway to mouths. The hiss of the espresso machine seemed suddenly distant. Even the dust motes drifting through the early sunlight appeared to slow their descent. The Admiral, broad-shouldered, impeccably pressed, metals glinting across his chest, had gone pale. His hand hovered above the counter, frozen mid-reach, as if he'd touched a ghost. He spoke again, softer, rawer. "Lieutenant Hale, Fox 9, it's you." And with those words, the quiet dignity of Avery Hale's life cracked open. No one here knew what she had once been. They only knew she served coffee. Avery had become a fixture in the cafe, as permanent as the scent of roasted beans and cinnamon rolls. She moved with the kind of silence that suggested she had learned, long ago, how to occupy space without demanding it. Regulars greeted her warmly, though none ever pushed past the gentle wall she kept around herself. In their eyes she was kind, dependable, perhaps a little shy. Her coworkers adored her. Her customers appreciated her. But no one knew her. They didn't know about the scars beneath the sleeves she always kept rolled low. They didn't know why she flinched, barely perceptible, but real, every time a helicopter passed overhead. They didn't know why she never raised her voice, not even when someone was unkind. They certainly didn't know the military had once given her a call sign reserved only for the most daring. Fox 9, and Avery preferred it that way, quiet, invisible, safe. Once, Avery Hale had lived in the skies. She had been a rescue pilot in one of the Navy's most dangerous search and recover squadrons. Her world had smelled of hydraulic fluid, jet fuel, and the metallic tang of adrenaline. She had worn a helmet that felt like a second skull, its weight comforting as she soared through storm clouds or plucked survivors from seas churning with chaos. She remembered the cold kiss of dawn air against her face as she ran checklists. She remembered the vibrating hum of the rotors, her lifeline, her promise. And she remembered, with a silent ache that settled behind her ribs, the night she lost her crew. It had been a mission no one should have survived. A violent storm. A distress call from a sinking vessel. Systems failing. Darkness thicker than ink. Her co-pilot screaming coordinates over a whirling tempest. Her hands gripping the controls so hard her knuckles shone white. They pulled 8 souls from the water before the wave hit, a rogue mountain of black sea. It swallowed the tail of the aircraft, wrenched them sideways, and ripped the world apart. Avery survived by what some called a miracle, and she called cruel chance. Her 2 closest comrades, a co-pilot who had become like a brother, and a flight medic whose laughter filled every doorway, did not. When she woke in the hospital, she could smell the sea salt trapped in her hair. She could hear her own heartbeat hammering against the monitors. But the beds beside her were empty. After months of therapy, of foldable chairs in sparse rooms where strangers asked about her feelings she couldn't find words for, she stepped away from the military with a quiet salute, a hollow chest, and a call sign that no longer felt like hers. The skies no longer belonged to her, or she no longer belonged to them. So she came here, to flour and coffee beans, to small talk and the soft clatter of mugs, to a life with no rotors, no storms, no goodbyes. Until today. The Admiral's whisper had summoned ghosts she had buried beneath the mundane rhythm of civilian life. Around him, customers blinked, confused. Most civilians knew rank well enough to be intimidated by the sight of a heavily decorated Admiral in their local café. His presence alone commanded respect. But the way he looked at Avery, with a cocktail of recognition, disbelief, and something dangerously close to awe, tilted the room's balance. A man at a corner booth scoffed. He was a regular who prided himself on knowing the staff, personally, though he never bothered to learn their last names. Fox whatever, he muttered loudly enough for half the cafe to hear. She's the girl who gets my order wrong if I change it. Lauder snickered from his tablemmates. Avery didn't flinch. She never did. The Admiral, however, turned toward the man, his jaw tightening. But Avery shook her head gently, a silent plea. Let it go. She'd learned long ago that dignity didn't require confrontation. Quiet was her armor. Still, the tension in the cafe grew thicker. Customers exchanged glances. The man in the booth smirked, emboldened by the silence around him. Someone whispered, "She's military," with open doubt, as if her small frame and gentle way of moving disqualified her. Though they didn't mean to, the patrons formed a circle of quiet judgment. Curiosity tinged with skepticism, human nature in its raw, unfiltered form. And at the center of it stood Avery, calm but uncomfortably exposed. The Admiral took a step toward her. His metals clinked softly, an accidental sound, a whisper of authority. His eyes glossed with emotion she hadn't expected. "I thought you were gone," he murmured, his voice thick. "We held a ceremony. We honored you." A tremor ran through the room. Avery lowered the coffee pot. Her hands were steady, but her breath had found the uneven rhythm she used to suppress during flights in dangerous winds. The man from the corner laughed again. "She's not even old enough for whatever story you're making up." In truth, Avery looked young for 34. Trauma had a way of preserving the face while hollowing everything underneath. The Admiral ignored him entirely. "Avery Hale," he said, loud enough for the entire cafe to hear, "is the reason I'm standing here today. She's the reason 24 families were not given folded flags. She's the bravest pilot I ever served with." Silence hit the cafe like a falling curtain. People who had once whispered now stared, some curious, some shocked, some ashamed. A barista stopped mid-steam of milk, her eyes widening as she looked at Avery with new clarity. Avery's heart tugged painfully. She didn't want this. Not the spotlight, not the whispers shifting from doubt to reverence, not the ghosts clawing at the edges of her memory. The Admiral continued, voice trembling. Fox 9 was a legend. A miracle worker in a cockpit. She pulled off maneuvers textbooks don't even attempt to describe. His breath caught, and she disappeared before we could honor her. Avery inhaled softly, grounding herself in the smell of roasted beans, the furnace, warmth of the ovens, the earthy comfort of cinnamon dust on her skin. Here, she wasn't a legend. She was just Avery. And she'd worked hard to keep it that way. The man in the corner wasn't done. He stood, puffing out his chest. "You expect us to believe this waitress saved your life? Come on. She can barely carry 3 mugs without spilling something." His laughter returned, brittle and mocking. Avery remained silent. That had always been her way. But her silence wasn't weakness. It was restraint. The Admiral stepped forward, eyes cold with the kind of authority that could quiet storms. "You will not disrespect her." His voice wasn't loud, but it had weight. The kind that made people sit straighter, breathe quieter, rethink their choices. Still, the man smirked, emboldened by habit. "Why, she's nothing special." The Admiral didn't look away from him as he spoke, but his next words were meant for everyone. "There is a quote one of my commanders used to say," he said. "Some heroes carry medals. Others carry scars no one sees." A ripple traveled through the room, soft as a breath, heavy as a truth people suddenly understood. He turned back to Avery. "And Fox 9 carries both." Avery felt something inside her shift, a door opening she had kept locked for years. Then it happened. The cafe door opened, and in walked 2 other service members. Younger than the Admiral but unmistakably military, sharp posture, crisp uniforms, eyes that registered everything. They froze upon seeing the Admiral, and then their gazes slid to Avery. Recognition flared. One whispered, disbelief coloring his voice, "Mom, is that really?" The Admiral nodded solemnly. "Yes, it's her." The 2 service members straightened instinctively, boots clicking together on tile. And then, without hesitation, they saluted. Not the Admiral, her, Avery. The woman holding a coffee pot. The woman everyone thought they knew. Gasps fluttered through the cafe like startled birds. Someone at a table placed their hand over their mouth. A teenager who had been scrolling his phone sat up straighter, eyes wide. The man in the corner paled. The Admiral exhaled slowly. Lieutenant Avery Hale, callsign Fox 9, saved 30, 2 lives in her final mission. She completed the rescue while injured, under impossible conditions, and without regard for her own survival. He paused. And she never once asked for recognition. Avery's pulse pounded in her ears. Not in fear, but something else. Something like release. Something like acceptance. The service members lowered their salutes only when she gave a small nod, the muscle memory of her training guiding her. The man in the corner glanced at the floor, suddenly very small. The Admiral turned toward him, then toward the rest of the cafe. Never assume the quietest person in the room is the least remarkable, he said softly. Some heroes walk among us carrying battles we will never see. Later, as Avery finally set down the coffee pot and breathed for the first time without weight on her chest, she offered a rare, gentle truth of her own. I didn't survive to be honored, she said, her voice steady. I survived to live differently. The cafe absorbed her words, holding them with reverence. Word spread quickly. Customers whispered to one another, not out of gossip but out of profound awe. Their expressions shifted: wonder, guilt, admiration, gratitude. Someone stood, then another, and another. In moments, the entire cafe rose to their feet. Not a sound among them. Just a room of ordinary people standing in silent respect for a woman who had once defied a storm to save strangers she would never meet again. Avery swallowed hard. The sight pressed into her heart, warm and overwhelming. The man in the corner approached, head lowered. I'm sorry, he murmured, voice cracking. I didn't know. Avery studied him. Then she offered a single nod, not forgiveness, not approval, but understanding. It was enough. The Admiral stepped beside her quietly. We've been looking for you, he said. Your squadron never stopped. Avery's gaze drifted across the room. These faces, these lives, this quiet community she had built piece by piece. I'm not the person I was, she said. No, the Admiral agreed gently. You're stronger now. She didn't answer. But she didn't look away either. Outside, sunlight spilled across the street like a blessing. Inside, Avery closed her eyes briefly, letting the warmth wash over her. The ghosts that had haunted her seemed softer now, standing a little farther back. Her story was out. Not because she wanted it, but because it was time. As the crowd slowly sat, still watching her with newfound reverence, she returned to her work, pouring coffee, offering quiet smiles, grounding herself in the life she chose. But something had changed. People now met her eyes with respect rather than assumption. The baristas moved around her with a protective warmth. The Admiral lingered not out of duty, but out of gratitude. And Avery, once Fox 9, once a storm fighter, once a ghost, felt for the first time in years seen. Truly seen. Some heroes fade into the background not because they lack greatness, but because the world has given them more battles than praise. Avery Hale didn't need applause, medals, or recognition. Her strength lived in her silence, her humility, and her unbroken spirit. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below, and tell us where you're watching from. Be sure to subscribe for more stories honoring the quiet heroes who walk among us every day.